Good evening, Thursday night, NUFC Matters. Supermac and Gibbo join me. Good evening, chaps.
Good evening, Steve. Hi, John.
Hi,
Great to see you guys. And as always, an hour to talk about Newcastle United and what's happened in the last 7 days. And John, our confidence was shattered. Our predictions were buried. And not just ours, everybody on NUFC Matters. We all fancied a win against Villa. We left with our tails between our legs. And lessons learnt, we hope, for the weekend ahead, which, of course, we'll be looking to towards the end of the programme. But what went wrong, John?
Everything, mate. I thought it was the biggest defeat of the season, and I think it was the worst defeat of the season. We've had bad times. We had a bad 45 minutes against Brentford, but then it went spectacularly right. And I was thinking of the losses we've had this season. And, you know, we had 3 on the bounce, all 2-0, if you remember. We lost at home to Liverpool. We didn't play well, but we had our moments. We had one moment. After they scored 2 early on, I think we ought to have got back in that. We had our moments in the cup final. In fact, before the header from Casemiro, we were the better side at the start of the cup final. And we had our moments at Man City. We had no moments against Aston Villa. I think it was the worst display of the season. It was certainly literally the biggest defeat by 3 clear goals. It would be easy to get depressed because we've had 1.5 bad games, because we had a very bad 45 minutes against Brentford before it went terrific, and then a very bad 90 minutes against Aston Villa. But to be honest, it was perhaps so bad that I'm writing it off and saying, look, it's a one-off. Even the greatest teams have a one-off. I remember when we beat Manchester United 5-1. I think it was the second time we finished runners-up in the Premier League after we blew the 12-point lead. We beat Man United 5-1. They went the next match to Southampton and let in 6, having let in 5 against Newcastle. But at the end of the season, they won the league. So you do get these one-off games. And as it happens, and we'll be talking about it later, I think this is the best game to come back. It's a superstar game. It's a big game. There's a lot of bump about it. It is not an also-ran team at Crystal Palace or Leicester or West Ham where we might get dragged down. It's an all-or-nothing match, and they're flaky. So I think it's a good game to come back. But if you ask what went wrong, everything went wrong. If you took the back 4, each one of who have been magnificent, each one of the back 4, I thought individually was poor. Byrne couldn't handle it like he hasn't been able to handle it recently. The pace, people dragging him around. Botman, I thought, was very shaky by his previous standards. Shaw had his poorest game in a long while. And even Trippier was taken by the Spanish boy who was marauding down the left-hand side. He took Trippier at the cleaners all afternoon. So individually and collectively, the back 4 were poor. Pope wasn't, and it's just as well, because the 3-0 could have been 6-0 without Pope.
Yes.
Our strongest thing, Malcolm, which we've all gone on about, our back 4, individually, I thought were weak at Villa, and Ollie Watkins' movement just destroyed them.
It certainly did. There were 2 things for me that really stood out. Firstly, if the first few minutes of the game against Aston Villa were almost identical to the first couple of minutes against West Ham, but West Ham failed to score. But Aston Villa, they hit the post, and then pretty soon afterwards, I think it was at the 11th minute, the first goal went in. And they had Newcastle under constant pressure from there. West Ham weren't able to keep that pressure going beyond a couple of minutes. And so Newcastle, they got back into the game early and turned the thing around. So that was one. The second thing was I personally feel that this game against Aston Villa highlighted the importance of Sean Longstaff in midfield and the amount of running that he does. He was left on the bench, and I think that we missed him defensively because he constantly gets back. He's on the edge of the box by the time they're arriving, and he defends well. And we didn't have that. There was nobody really keeping the edge of the box safe for Newcastle, and so all too often it was getting into the box. And yes, Ollie Watkins, as you say, he just ran riot. And so I think those two factors got to start brighter. Come on, this is West Ham and then Aston Villa
and Brentford.
And we started so sloppily in both games that the players, they need livening up for sure before they get out on the pitch.
I really do think you're absolutely right, Malcolm. I thought we really, really missed Longstaff. He'd been ill during the week, which we didn't know about.
Didn't know that, yeah.
No, they're not let out, Malcolm, at the time.
No, nothing's ever said, is it?
No, so you don't know. And you think, why is he being dropped? But in fact, he wasn't. He'd been ill, and he was only good enough to make the bench. He was only fit enough, to make the bench.
Well, he proved his worth more by being absent.
Yes, I was about to say, Malcolm, there's an old saying in football, isn't there? And we've both heard it many, many times. You're never more appreciated than when you're not there.
That's right.
They suddenly realise how much they miss you, if you like.
Yeah, and I know I've said this a number of times, but for anybody who hasn't heard me say this before, go and look at the Premier League stats. Sean Longstaff does more running every single 90 minutes than any other player in the Premier League. And so he's up and back. He's working. He's always coming and supporting the ball wherever it goes. He goes right, he goes left, as well as up and back. And he gets there. He gets there in time for everything, just before it's happening. So that's great defensively, and it's also good in attack as well.
I mean, Emery's done a good job there, with
he has.
In the way he's revitalised him. He's proved himself to be a good manager, and they always had good players. I mean, you look at not just Ollie Watkins, who wasn't scoring goals till this guy come along and told him how great he was. But you look at Mings, you look at David Luiz, you look at McGinn. We've always known they're good players. I mean, David Luiz was wanted by Arsenal. McGinn's done his bit. Ollie Watkins has been in England international. Mings has been with England. Had the goalkeeper's no slouch. He might be a fruitcake, Martinez, but he's no slouch. He's a World Cup winner. So they've had good players, but they haven't had a manager that made the best of them, i.e. Steven Gerrard. Didn't do it with them at all. And all of a sudden, they look a good side. And I tell you what, the side we are going to face on Sunday may be above Aston Villa in the league, but that's just because the start of the season Aston Villa had. Aston Villa are a better side than Spurs.
Yeah, I think so. I would agree with you wholeheartedly, John, on that. Yeah. Their fluency was absolutely fabulous.
Yeah, it was.
To watch. It really was.
I mean, I was disappointed, Steve, in a lot of things. The midfield, I thought we didn't see much of Willock whatsoever. There wasn't the dominance from Joelinton or Bruno. I was very disappointed because I've been blowing the trumpet a little bit, but I was very disappointed up front in Anthony Gordon. I thought he was very insignificant.
That was my next question, lads. I've asked everybody on the platform that this week. Malcolm, you were a manager at Fulham. And had a successful time there. You will have dealt with dressing room incidents. you may not have dealt, I'm not sure, with a bit of insolence on the touchline. Gordon was involved in a
had
minor,
it all, Steve.
well,
I was at Fulham for 5.5 years, and in that time, you get the whole package.
You get that. So
Yeah.
look, Anthony Gordon is your player at Fulham, and he does what he did last week. Would you have started him in the following game as a manager?
I've got my doubts about him, and I have from the very beginning. The very first time he came onto the park at St James, he looked really good. He came on, and I think he played the last 25 minutes, and he showed good skills. And I thought, yeah, if you can continue this, but he hasn't. Where have those skills gone? I'm not seeing them now. I'm really not seeing them. I'm not seeing the movement. I'm not seeing the. I'm not seeing these a tenaciousness in him on the ball, and I think he just looks all too relaxed and easy-osy, and he needs a rocket up his backside.
And of course, he's in a position where we, numerically at least, are very strong, because you've got Murphy, you've got Almiron, who got on off the bench and will be pressing for a starting place because he's still the top scorer. He's still the top scorer with his 11. So you've got Almiron, you've got Murphy, you've got Gordon, you've got Joelinton playing that position. You haven't got Sir Maximum at the moment, but he will be coming back at some stage. There's a lot of people that can play in the two wide positions. You've got Elliot Anderson, who went on and played wide in a couple of games back and did great.
Anderson's done better than I've seen from the other fella. I think that he must be quite disappointed that he's not getting more game time.
Elliot Anderson,
Elliot Anderson, yes, because he's done nothing wrong at all. I thought it was a disgraceful decision when his goal was disallowed. And so looking at it, I don't think he's put a foot wrong. Anderson, he's always looked a threat, always.
But Malcolm, getting back to that original question, would you have picked him as a manager after what he did? It was water off a duck's back. He was in the team photo afterwards. It was nipped in the bud. However, at the press conference last Friday, Eddie Howe was pressed on the situation. Everything okay? What's the situation? The result is he picks him for the team. But I just wonder whether you would have picked him. Or whether I mean, everybody's different. I just wonder what the attitude of the rest of the dressing room was. We've had a lot made about the dressing room harmony. We see the team photos at the end of each game when they win, and that's something that Eddie Howe's ethos is built on. But when you see a player give that little bit back, which isn't something that we're used to seeing, you just wonder. I just speak as somebody who managed at an amateur level, and I knew I had to deal with that on more than one occasion. And only once did I ever put that person back in the following week. The rest of the time, I'd park them on the bench for a week or two and let them have a think about what they've done, But he's put them straight back in. I know he has the added bonus of working with them day to day, and the senior players like Trippier probably put his arm around him, and Dan Burn probably said, "Look, listen, son. That's not the way we'll go on at this club, etc." But it's all hypothetical. I just wonder whether you would have picked them. That's all.
I think under the circumstances, yes, I would have picked him.
Yeah.
It would have needed something absolutely outlandish.
Yeah.
For me to drop a player. I'll give you an example. The only time that I've ever really gone against a couple of players, I'm quite an early riser in the morning, and I got up. We were up at Blackburn.
Yeah,
we were playing away at Blackburn and staying in the hotel. and I got up and went and opened the curtains, and I opened, and my room was at the back of the hotel, and there were two figures sneaking in, and this was about 6:30 in the morning, and so I took very severe action against them. But that was really the only time I went heavy on people. If somebody wasn't good enough, I dropped them. Simple as that. And I told them why I dropped them. I always told everybody exactly why I was making certain decisions. Always. So I kept them in the picture, and I would say, this is why I've dropped you. Look to improve, and you've got every chance of getting back in. But if you don't improve, you won't. But when people absolutely misbehave in a totally unprofessional manner, that was it for me. And they never played again. And I moved them on as soon as I could. I moved them on.
Give us your view, Gibbo, on this whole Anthony Gordon thing. What would you have done?
Can I tell you, first of all, another little story, and I'll come to involving the Anthony Gordon situation, about how every manager is different and they'll handle it different. Malcolm might have handled it in the way that Eddie Howe handled it, because it wasn't an offence like coming in 6 o'clock in the morning, which is horrendous.
What I must say, John, is that as a manager, I want to see a player, when he's being taken off, being upset.
Yeah.
I don't want to see him happy.
The interesting thing, though, an interesting thing that we try, when I say we, I mean fans, not necessarily us three, but there's a lot of comparisons, isn't there, Steve, between now and the entertainers. You know, the fact that Howe is trying to build the entertainers, etc., and that is the most successful side of recent times. 2 successive runners-up in the Premier League, etc., etc. Well, the manager of the entertainers was Kevin Keegan, who, as we know, is a very volatile little character who, you know, if you darken his doorstep, you're never seen again, sort of thing. And there's the famous tale, which you might know, Steve, that Bez tells. That Bez played against Aston Villa at St James's Park, and he was told before the kickoff, Keegan, that Ginola was going to tuck in, etc., etc. And Bez said to Keegan, hey, the left back, I forget who it was, Charles or somebody, will just come steaming down on me all day long. If you remove, Ginola doesn't track anyway, but if you take him out of a wide position and move him inside, I'm going to be absolutely hammered. He said, and within the first 15 minutes, exactly what I said happened. Ginola's tucked in. Bez is standing there like a small Grays monument on his Jacksy, on his Jack Jones, and this fullback comes hurtling at him. And when he managed to get the ball out, he shouted, because he was uptight, he shouted at Kevin, I told you so, Gaffer, I told you so, you know, because he'd been exposed and he might be regularly exposed. He said, the minute the words come out my mouth, I thought, it's the biggest mistake I've ever made, because Kevin Keegan does not like that sort of thing. And he said, the next thing I know, and there's only 15 minutes of a home match gone, mine, 15 minutes of a home match gone. He says, next thing I see, Robbie Elliott's warming up on the touchline. He said, and I thought, oh, dear me, can I do anything here to head this off? And within 20 minutes, he was off, and Robbie Elliott was on. He said, after the game, I went to Arthur Cox and I said, who was the number 2 to KK? And he says, what do you think I should do? I'll go in there and grovel. And Arthur said, I think it's a very good idea to grovel, mate. So he went in the manager's room and said, I must apologize. I was out of order. It was a disgrace. I shouldn't have made a public statement like I did, etc. And KK said, don't worry about it, Bez. It's all over. I've forgotten about it, and you can forget about it. And for the next 6 games, Bez never played. He was dropped.
Oh, he's really forgotten about it.
Next 6 games, I've forgotten all about it, Bez. Don't worry about it. Next 6 games, he said, I sat on the bench. So that's how it would have been handled by KK. The one thing that comes out of the Anthony Gordon and the Eddie Howe situation, should Eddie have played him? Should he not? There's a great feeling that perhaps he shouldn't. But you know what? Turning that completely around, what struck me is how much Anthony Gordon let down Eddie Howe. Because after Eddie Howe had supported him verbally during the week and said to the press at his press conference, it's okay, it's a young lad, young lads are passionate, I like to see passion, it's all forgotten about. Then he starts him, you run yourself to death. You can't guarantee playing well, but you can guarantee that you give 200% of blood in water because your manager supported you so publicly. I strangely thought that Gordon lacked all that in the game.
Yes, totally.
So the greatest thing that come out of it for me was that how much Gordon let down Eddie Howe.
Absolutely, John. Yes, he did.
I think he did.
Yeah.
And you know what? Knocking it on, Steve, it's going to be interesting now to say, does he pick him this Sunday?
Well, let's face it, chaps. After last weekend, this has probably got to be Eddie Howe's easiest job because nobody deserves that place after last week.
Oh, right. You could drop the whole 11, but he's going to make about 2 changes, isn't he? Because he just doesn't make changes. But I think Gordon will be one of those changes because he's also got so many options out wide. In other positions, he's got less options.
And the position that Newcastle are in, there is no messing about. That whatever is going to be the very best for the team, get the best result possible, do it. No loyalty to players, none of that in any way. Got to pick the very best side that is going to beat Spurs.
And we are in a position now, because of what happened at Aston Villa, that we can't afford another setback. We've got to beat Spurs. And I believe we will, incidentally, and we'll come to that eventually, but we've got to beat Spurs. We can't lose to Spurs. I mean, the reason why we're relatively comfortable and the Aston Villa result hasn't killed us is because Spurs lost at home to Bournemouth.
Yes.
After we played, can you imagine? I mean, if we think it was a bad result at Aston Villa, at least we were beaten by a side in a red hot streak. They were beaten by a side.
Yeah, they're the absolute informed side at the moment.
Yeah, and they were beaten by a side that was being relegated. And they were at home. And they were at home to Bournemouth, losing 3-2 to Bournemouth. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. I mean, that was shocking. And that tells you how flaky Spurs are.
Yeah, interesting game coming up at the weekend. There's no doubt about it. A couple of questions coming in. We've touched on it already, Tom, but I will ask it anyway. Malcolm and John, would you start Longstaff on Sunday's game? I think the overriding answer to that, Tom, is yes. Gibbo's
I think Malcolm, we've already...
And Malcolm said yes as well.
We've had the discussion, haven't we?
Without a shadow of doubt, and I think that he will start because he is very liked by Eddie Howe, for starters. And the midfield was strangely not good against it. And I think it's who plays with Longstaff. And I mean, it will be Bruno, of course, and it will be Joelinton unless you play him wide left, because I don't think Joelinton will go out of the team for one moment as far as Eddie Howe's concerned. So you'll either revert to what was the usual, Willock, Longstaff and Bruno, but only if you play Joelinton wide left, or you play Joelinton with Longstaff and Bruno, and Willock's the one left out, and you play whoever left and right up front, whether you can play Almiron on one side and Murphy on the other.
Right, because I thought Willock had a very poor.
I thought he was the worst of the three, Malcolm.
Yes, against Villa. I think that Sean Longstaff makes him a better player. Makes him look a better player, and he is a better player with Sean Longstaff there. That he can spend his running time going forwards and looking to get in the opposing box, and Sean he'll cover all day long, and he's terrific at it. But when Sean isn't there, Willock struggles. He struggles because he's got an awful lot more work to do back in his own half than he does when Sean is there. So,
and he's not a physical player, Malcolm. He's not going to physically be strong like
no,
Sean
that's right.
and like Joelinton. They're physical. They will make their physicality tell. Willock plays a different game. It's not about physical. He doesn't hold people off with muscle and all that. He doesn't play that way. He's a butterfly, isn't he? He flips and runs and does his damage that way. But I think Longstaff is a certainty.
Yes, yeah, and if you were to put me to the test, I would play Bruno, Sean Longstaff, and Joelinton as a three, and then look to play two wide men, or at least two up front, one wide, or two wide and one up front.
I would
drop off, go wide, and what have you.
I would certainly go with that midfield. Yeah, I would go with that.
Yeah, I would play Isaac along with Wilson if all are fit.
Yeah, Barry saying I mentioned the other day about how good Pope really is, saying he's made it look good by the back four. Barry agrees. He says, who would you go for keeper-wise to improve the position? I've got to be honest, look, I watched the game again, although it was painful to watch that Villa game again. And, Pope did keep the score down, pulled off a few saves. I'm not convinced that he is the best keeper in the UK. I think Gareth Southgate's got it right. I don't think he is. I think as much as I hate to say it, I think probably Pickford is probably our. I think he's our best keeper. I don't think his kicking's great, Malcolm Pope. I don't think his kicking's great. But
no, his kicking isn't. But the way that he dominates his box.
Mm-hmm.
Does it better for me than anybody else I've seen in this country, particularly of the English goalkeepers.
Yeah. Would you? I mean, looking at Barry's question, he's saying
some of the saves he makes. I think that's fantastic.
Would you bring in another keeper? Because I don't think
Dubravka's and I certainly wouldn't go as far as to say that the back four, the form of the back four before the Villa match, is making Pope look good. He is good.
Mm-hmm.
He is good, and he is one hell of a confidence builder in defenders' minds to know that they've got him behind.
I think my thing you mentioned there, Steve. Would you bring in another goalkeeper? If I'm looking towards the summer, and we all know that Newcastle have got 3 transfer lists of targets, one for us being in the Champions League, one for us being in the Europa League or the Conference, and one for us not being in Europe, because you're going to attract different people and you can spend a different amount of money because of the television money you would make in the Champions League, etc. But when you consider what we need in the summer, I think we need a left back hugely. We want a right-sided centre-half. We want a defensive midfield player, attacking midfield player, and a winger. Now, if we get them, there's 5. The goalkeeper would make it 6. I don't think they'll go for 6 signings like that. So I don't think they'll go for a goalkeeper in the summer at all. They'll keep Pope as the number 1. And then they've got an interesting situation, because you then keep either Dubravka or Darlow, considering who will stay and who's not wanted by other clubs, to be the backup keeper. And then you've got to find a third keeper, because they'll let Gillespie go. Will it be the forgotten man of the cup final? Or will it be... I can't see... I can't see, bless him. He was nowhere, and then he's a blaze of glory playing at Wembley, and I don't know whether he's driving the lawnmower at the moment at St James's Park or what he's doing. Where is he there? Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure he's on holiday with this gorgeous girl, and I don't blame him for that in Rome. But is he driving the lawnmower or is he driving the team coach? Where
It's
is
amazing,
he?
isn't
What's
it?
he doing? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. Is he still with us? Can we join hands and find the living? I don't know what he's doing, but we've got to find the right back. Goalkeeping situations very interesting. I don't think we're going to buy, but do we go? What do we do after Pope? Is it Dubravka and Dolo? I don't think one of them will stay as the third choice keeper. Do you?
No.
I think they'll be on the bikes. It'll be whether both of them want to be on the bikes. Because they might, if they both want first team football, they've got to go. And then we've got to buy a goalkeeper, by the way, but it'll just be a backup one, I would think. But it's going to be fascinating, that position, because I can't see them giving a new contract to Gillespie. And before the old Liverpool goalkeeper can get any new contract, they've got to find him.
John, when Newcastle found themselves in the situation prior to the League Cup final, if you were Gillespie and saw how everything was manipulated around to cover for the sending off of Pope, you couldn't be happy with that, surely.
No, I don't think you could. But I think
been happy with it.
I think he knew well before the cup final that his contract runs out at the end of this season, and he wasn't going to get a new one.
Right.
And I mean, I don't want to be at all offensive to Gillespie, who is by all accounts a boy, etc. But I don't think he's Newcastle United quality, and I don't think he's been here about 4 years. He's never played a Premier League game, has he?
No, he hasn't. No. John, if I bumped into him in the street, I wouldn't know who he is.
Correct. That's absolutely true. It's going to be, as Steve brought up about the goalkeepers, that's going to be fascinating this summer, but I don't think it's going to dominate the transfer situation one iota.
I certainly don't. I think we'll learn more about Pope as time goes on. I didn't say that he was a bad keeper. I just said, ultimately, like everybody last week, he didn't, he looked shaky, he looked a bit nervous. His kicking wasn't great, but there's no doubt he makes himself big. He uses his height to his advantage. He saves, and he saved us. He saved us plenty of times with the exception of the blip against Liverpool.
The funny thing is that if you just dropped into Villa Park from Mars or something last week and watched Newcastle play, you wouldn't have said that back four is the best in the Premier League. And you wouldn't have bought any of the four on that game. No. Of course you would on other games. Trippier's a wonderful player. Botman's going to be the future of the club. Shaw's not because of his age, which is why they want a right-sided centre-half while keeping Shaw. And Burns not going to be the left-back next season. But, if you just dropped in and knew nothing, you wouldn't go and buy those guys individually on their performance at Aston Villa. And that includes Trippier, who I rate so highly, it's untrue. But on that particular day, and everybody has a bad one, on that particular day, he had his hands full with this Spanish guy.
And it's going to be interesting, John, on listening carefully to you there. It's going to be interesting to see how Newcastle show their mettle defensively against Tottenham.
Oh, this is huge because also, while I'm saying Tottenham are flaky, etc., any given day that Kane and Song decide to turn up, you've got problems.
Of course you have.
Yeah. Got to be on blob against them.
Absolutely.
So that is, for me, the key on Sunday is going to be that the back four become Hadrian's Wall again. Because if they play like they did at Aston Villa, Kane and Song, it'll give them massive problems.
Yes.
Yeah. Question from Tom Dixon. He says, what did you think of Matt Targett when he came on last week, lads?
I thought he was as bad as the other four. But having said that, where's it? I mean, that match, you've almost got to write that match off because Did anybody, include the subs that come on, did anybody enhance their reputation at Villa Park? And I think the answer is no. Not enhance their reputation.
John, absolutely right. I agree. And it was one of those games, I think, that you just need to put behind you.
Absolutely.
And get into training through the week and really get yourselves organised and back onto form. And get you and build your confidence up, get your head up instead of it drooping, and say, right, let's get stuck into Spurs and let's get our own back for what happened at Villa.
Yeah, I mean, what you said there, Steve, asking the question from one of the lads, one of the listeners, which was a lovely question and a good one about Target. I mean, my answer to the left-back position is I would pose two questions. My first question would be, does Dan Burn, lovely lad that he is, in good enough form over several matches, not just Villa, to play left back? And my answer would be no. He could do with the rest of playing left back. He is not doing enough. My second question is, did Target do anything when he come on to justify taking Burns' position? And the answer would be no again. But you can't have no left back. So what do you do? Yeah. Do you leave Burns, which is probably what the manager will do, by the way. Yeah. But I mean, I think Burns out there he's almost suffered. He almost needs taking out the firing line. Or, and here's a wild one. Would either of you, and this includes you, Steve, as a super fan, would either of you play Target left back and put Burn in West Botman? Burn in his original position?
Not at the moment. I wouldn't, John. No. Me personally.
So would you play Burn left back, Malcolm?
I think Burn is becoming his own worst enemy. That I've said this before, that when he first was put into the side, he just played pure and simple defensive football, stopped people getting past him. But now, with the success that Newcastle have been having in their results all through, and the way the defence have been playing, now he thinks he's a footballer and he wants to fancy down it a bit. Well, that's all very well for those who have really got the skills in which to do it, but I don't think he has. And what I have seen is that in recent games, the opponents are overloading their right wing onto Burn. And they're looking to take him on all the while. They're putting their quickest man there to get beyond him, and it keeps happening.
Malcolm is a manager. You would have done that. That is an Achilles heel for Newcastle.
Yes, it is.
You were playing against Newcastle.
The opponents are seeing Burn as an Achilles heel. Yes,
you put somebody quick out wide to take him on. And you know that is a problem. And I'm really not having to go down because he's done brilliant.
No.
But it's not his position, Malcolm.
All we're doing is we're not giving an opinion here. Actually, what we're doing is reporting on what we've been seeing.
Yes, and in fairness to him, he's a left-sided centre half. Whether he should be in the team there or not is a different matter. But he's a left-sided centre half. He's not a left back. I mean, if you played Botman at left back or you played Shaw at right back, they would look more vulnerable than they do when they play in the centre. If you played Lascelles at right back, you know, I mean, can you remember under Steve Bruce, and I'm not trying to sour the evening by forcing you to remember, but if you remember under Steve Bruce, we on occasions played Murphy and Ritchie at fullback, Malcolm.
Yeah. And
wondered why they didn't feel defensively comfortable.
Ritchie, in all honesty, is just about the worst defender I have ever seen in the Premiership. He just hadn't got a clue. He was being
In fairness
told
to him,
about.
he wasn't a left back though, was he? He
Yeah.
wasn't a left back.
Yeah.
Can you remember that Brucey actually played the two of them at
Yes.
fullback?
That's right. And three centre halves.
That is cruelty to animals. I mean, Stevie could have got his collar felt for doing that. That's cruelty to animals, that is.
Barry also mentions that there are rumours about us linking up with the Belgian club, KV Oostende. How do you guys feel about creating these links with other clubs?
We have, just before Malcolm gives his opinion, we have gone and talked with that club. I know. The idea being of the new owners that we form this sort of European-wide links that Manchester City have got, where they've got a lot of subsidiary clubs in the City family, within the City family.
Yeah.
And we are looking to do exactly the same, and we're trying to explore what clubs they might be. Now, there is the difficulty because you don't know what's going on in those particular countries, because you're not going to go and take over Ajax in blinking Holland and Sporting Lisbon in Portugal and I don't know, AC Milan. It's not going to be that. You're going to take over these sort of clubs like Ostend, who have got a very good setup in terms of training ground, etc., etc. We're not necessarily going to take over that club, but it's one of them we've looked at, and it's part of this. Remember, on a totally different thing, Steve, where John Hall looked at a Sporting Club of Newcastle, didn't he? Which was a different thing to this, because we were taking other sports. We took rugby union and we took basketball, etc., etc., etc. But yes, that is being looked at. And what you do is you send your budding managers out there and you buy young players in. And instead of playing in them in your under 21s or whatever, you send them out to that club for a season on loan. It's a bit like Watford and Udinese.
Yeah. Yes. But the beauty of doing it that way is that you have a control over your coaches in the foreign club. And so you can send youngsters, where there's been a number of young players who have gone on loan. And quite what happens when they're there, you're not too sure because you're not in control of it. Whereas if you've got a feeder club like Ostend, then you can put 3, 4, 5, 6 players, young players there, and let them work with the coaches and with Belgian players in the main. And it could really work, really improve players. But everybody at the club, Eddie Howe and his coaches, they know how they're being treated, what they're doing, what work they're doing, what they're learning. And I think it can work really well, really well. As a manager, I would love to have that situation.
It's a good point, Malcolm, because you can put if it's your club, you're in charge of who the manager is and who the coaches are at that club.
Yes.
And then you can actually put the manager and the coach into that club and say you're playing exactly the same way as Newcastle do. You with the 3 in midfield, with 1 attacker and 2 wide men, etc. You use Shola Miobi and the other lone guy who's there going across regularly to do reports how it's going. You can control it, and therefore when you bring those young players back, they're already schooled in the Newcastle United way.
Yes, because they've been playing at a seriously good level where they're just going to be learning all of the while, and being tested, seriously tested.
And playing in the system that Newcastle United playing.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's absolutely great. And there are other Manchester City, of course, they're doing that. And when you think that the operation that Manchester City owners have created worldwide. You look at Manchester City, good heavens above, they've got 2 first teams that they could put out. Well, that's what you need, certainly, when you're seeking to succeed in the Champions League.
Sure.
And
sure.
Yeah, I would agree. Donald asks, do you guys think Joelinton's more effective in midfield or as part of the front 3?
I think he's more effective in midfield. I tell you for why. I think he's a serious ball winner in midfield. He upsets the opposition playing in the middle of the park, and I think he's a better footballer there. We've seen him play up front, and he's looked a total donkey at times. And I'm still being kind to him there. So yeah, I think he's a midfielder without a shadow.
You see,
but preferably in the middle.
I think you're right.
In the middle.
In the one of the main reasons I would play him in the middle rather than outside left is you don't need your outside left to be 8'6". The same as you don't need your left back to be 8'6". We would have 2 jolly green giants playing wide left if you've got Byrne and Joelinton in front of him. But his size and his physicality and his strength can come into play when he's centre midfield in breaking things up and breaking their movement. Not just when we've got the ball, but when they've got the ball. And the wonderful thing is that he does have a touch, so that if he wins it because of his physicality, he can pass it out.
Yes, he can.
Midfield. He can pass it out.
Yes, he's got a good awareness as well.
Absolutely.
All around him.
Yes, I think he's much more effective, if you like, in there with the 2 Brazilians, Bruno and Joelinton, with Longstaff at the moment. That would be my 3 that I would pick.
Certainly my 3, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting stuff. And I did have another question from Paul Patterson. Whilst I still think we'll win on Sunday, who would take a draw now if it were offered to keep things as they are and waste another game for Spurs? I mean, a draw's better than a defeat, lads, I guess.
No way.
Newcastle want to win this one, don't they?
No way, Jose. No way, Jose.
Absolutely. Got to win it.
We win this game. We will win this game. This lot take a draw off a side that couldn't beat Bournemouth at home. Are you kidding me? And we are at the stage where, honestly, we used to think negatively. When we had Steve Bruce and Mike Ashley, we took draws all day long because they were better in defeats. We don't need to take draws now. We have got to take wins. I might have been suckered into taking a draw at Aston Villa because they're red hot, but I'm not going to take a draw at home to Spurs. We won at Spurs, for goodness sake. We won at Spurs when they had a manager, which they haven't got now. They've got a caretaker. When they had a manager, and they still had Kane and they still had Song, we play this side on Sunday and we beat them. That's the way we've got to go at this. And I believe both those statements. I do believe that we will beat them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's your thoughts as well on this announcement? We knew that the games needed to be fitted in, but Newcastle to play their last game of the season, last home game of the season, Monday the 22nd of May, 8 o'clock on Sky, which means that in this calendar year, we won't have had a Saturday 3 o'clock kickoff.
So I mean, this has just come out, Malcolm, and I want to pick Steve up on this. Since we come on air, I didn't know about this. I knew that Brighton had to be rearranged. Steve, it's now been rearranged for.
So here you go. I'm going to put it up on the screen. Bear with us. I've just copy and pasted that into the chat. So there you go. So there's our last 2 fixtures. Thursday, the 18th of May, Brighton and Hove Albion at home, 7:30 kickoff on Sky. And then Monday, the 22nd of May, Leicester City at home, 8 o'clock on Sky.
Oh, so Brighton's been put on the Thursday.
Yeah.
And
Leicester. But still, our last game of the season is Chelsea, yes?
Our last game of the season is Chelsea. But what people are up in arms about is Newcastle haven't had a Saturday 3 o'clock kickoff since last year. Leeds United being the last game that we had at home on a Saturday at 3 o'clock. And Newcastle's last home game is on a Monday night live on Sky. And Brighton, of all teams, have got to travel up here.
I was going to say, if you're a Brighton fan, it doesn't affect the team so much
on a Thursday
because they fly up. But if you're a Brighton fan, coming to Newcastle on a Thursday night and then having to get home is absolutely horrendous. I mean, we're not surprised, are we? I mean, when was sane decisions automatically made? It is far from good. There's no question about that. I realised it couldn't be the away game because on the last day of the season, Malcolm, everybody's got to kick off at precisely the same time.
Exactly the same time, yes.
So that there's no advantage to anybody for the final league positions. But those two are, well, we're not surprised. I suppose the only small crumb of comfort is that we are at home in those games, and we're not asking Newcastle fans to travel to the end of the country. But I can imagine Brighton fans are thrilled to bits about that. They really are, because they could still also be in the mix for Europe. For one of the Brighton,
they could be.
Even if it's a Europa League, I mean, that match could still have a lot on it, whether it's us for the Champions League and them for the Europa League or whatever. But it's not a dead rubber, not by any means. And if you come to that, Leicester's not a dead rubber as far as because we are still going for Europe and they're desperate to stay up. So it's which is why Telly's interfering, because they want matches that are meaningful and messing everything about. But it's horrendous, but hardly surprising. I mean, what is king? These days, the fans on king. Saturday, 3 o'clock, forget that. The fans on king. Television's king. If television say you're going to play on the moon at midnight, we'll play on the moon at midnight.
Yeah, but look at the money they put in, John. You know, it's absolutely colossal.
Oh, and that's why it's tolerated by clubs.
When the Premier League started, Sky Television, the sports channels, they put the English game seriously on the map.
Oh, there's no question. But that's no consolation to travelling fans. It might be a consolation to sit-at-home fans who can see it on telly in their own living room.
Sure.
And it's definitely why clubs tolerate it, because that's where a huge amount of dough comes in. But your travelling supporter, the guy that goes everywhere, luckily those two games are at home, but your travelling supporter and we sell out every away game, whatever number we get, is just not considered for one moment. Because the games that are put on these unearthly times are always the long travelling, aren't they? You know, it's a Thursday night when people are coming from Brighton. I mean, did they get back 3 days later? When did they get back to Brighton from Newcastle? Like, I mean, you know, it's
John, they're not walking, for heaven's sake.
Well, I tell you what, if you're thumbing a lift, you're in trouble. You can get to the South Pole quicker.
Newcastle United take on Spurs Sunday, 2 o'clock kickoff live on Sky. It's a sellout as normal. Your pre-match entertainment and post-match entertainment is at the Dog and Parrot with Supermac and Gibbo. They're at noon and then at 4:45 this weekend. Free entry, kids welcome, nice food, nice beer, get yourself along there. ASM is the main doubt for Sunday. He continues his recovery from a hamstring issue. There was footage today, of course, from the training session, and Miguel Almiron was involved. No reaction from his injury, so one would imagine he will be playing some part on Sunday, and also going through his paces with Sean Longstaff. Harrison Ashby was also training with the senior squad today after his return from injury and his rather splendid under-21 debut on Monday, where he scored and had an assist. As for Tottenham, well, Lucas Moura is suspended, Rodrigo Bentancur, Clement Lenglet, Emerson Royal, Ryan Sessegnon and Yves Bissouma are all out injured. Ben Davies is doubtful at this moment in time. And, of course, refereeing the game, David Coote, quite a quick return for the Nottinghamshire referee. He took charge, of course, of the Carabao Cup final defeat at Wembley. It's his first game at St James's Park since the 3-1 Premier League victory over Burnley in October 2020, though. VAR is Neil Swarbrick, and we will have a full rundown on Eddie Howe's press conference tomorrow, so stay tuned for that tomorrow. So, Gibbo, your prediction for this game at the weekend. It's a must-win. You and Malcolm have both said, are they going to win it?
Yes, they are going to win it. Partly because of us and partly because of them. I mean, this is set up to be right because it's a big game. I would be more nervous if we're playing Crystal Palace at home or West Ham at home, a side that could come 2 banks of 4, make it difficult for us. There's no pace or entry. The game is flat, etc., etc. This won't be flat. This is a make or break game. Now, yes, I totally accept that any time Kane and Song decide to turn up, you can be in big, big trouble. But we won down there against them. The fans are dispirited. They're against Daniel Levy. Every game they're chanting against him. They're chanting against their own players on occasions, as Sanchez found out in the last game. They haven't got a manager because Conte took to his toes and his assistants in charge. I mean, if they're planning for next season and they're wondering if they're going to be in the Champions League, is Levy going to be there next season? Is Santini, the caretaker manager, going to be there? Is Kane going to be there? They don't know who's going to be there and who's not going to be there. Their temperament is much more flaky than our togetherness. And I do feel that this game is set up for us. I do realise the danger. And if you're playing Kane and Song, there's danger. There's no question about that. But the Premier League's like that. The last 3 games, Newcastle have played centre forwards, Ivan Toney, Ollie Watkins, and Harry Kane. That's all 3 England centre forwards. That's the way it is in the Premier League. No question. I think we will win. The atmosphere will be right. The fans will be up for us. War flags will be there. If we start quick, and they'll get flaky, but we've got to start quick. We've got to start quick and be tight at the back. If we start quick and be tight at the back, then we win. And I mean, I would think that we can win by 2 clear goals, 2-0 or 3-1, if you're going to give them a goal. But I do think we'll win, and I would be very shocked if we don't. If we win, we are 6 points ahead of Spurs with a game in hand.
Yes.
All right. So you're going 2-0 or 3-1. I'm going to go 2-1, John. I'm going to go 2-1. I think Harry Kane will score.
2-1 as well, Steve.
And you're going 2-1 as well.
I'm going 2-1 as well. Yeah. But yeah, the defence has got to get its act together this weekend. They are playing against 2 absolutely super forwards for different ways. I've always liked Son, always, and I'd have him in my side any day. I think though that the atmosphere Spurs have always suffered from having a poor atmosphere in the dressing room. Always, even back when I was playing, for heaven's sake, half a century ago, that time and again they could go on a dip, and I think that's where they are just at the moment. And as you so rightly pointed out, John, that 3-2 defeat at home to Bournemouth, that's not doing their confidence any good at all.
No.
And I think they'll come a bit heavy-legged, and we must make up for the disaster that happened last Sunday.
Yeah, definitely got to. Pochettino is currently being interviewed about a return to Premier League club. Is it Chelsea? Is it Spurs? We've got somebody in the chat saying that he's been interviewed by Spurs, Richard Naylor. Interesting.
Never go back.
Yeah, let him go back. The problem at that club is the same as the problem at Manchester United. It's the owners. And until they sort the ownership out, I'm afraid it doesn't matter who goes in there, that they're always going to be in the same position. But that's not our problem. We've got owners that we're happy with. Yeah, we're all predicting a win. Been a great show, as always, guys. Look forward to seeing you next week. And we're going for a slightly earlier time, next Thursday, because Newcastle, of course, play away to Everton. So we'll be doing the show next Thursday at 2:00 in the afternoon, which means some of you won't be able to watch live, unfortunately, but we will be putting it straight up, so you'll be able to catch it at the usual time of 6:00. But don't forget, get along to Dong and Parrot on Sunday, 12 o'clock, to see Gibbo and Malcolm. Take care, lads.
Indeed.
All the best, boys. All the best.
And to you guys, and to everybody going on Sunday. Let's enjoy a really good game. I think it will be.
Keep the faith, guys. Keep the faith.
A big thanks to all our sponsors: Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks also to Mr. Vicky's, handmade in Cumbria. These sauces are really hot stuff. You can order them by emailing info@mrvickys.co.uk or by telephoning 01768 210 102. Thanks to Neil and the guys at Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. And thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, nufcmatters.com. If you want to subscribe to the show, hit the subscribe button tonight. It is free. Hit the thumb up under the video to like the video and click share to share to your other social media. If you want to join the channel, hit join. There's 3 different tiers. Pick the one that suits you and help support the channel financially. If you want to pay a one-off membership fee of £25 and get these goodies, a scarf, a pen, a cup, and entry into the monthly draw, then go to NUFC Matters and look for membership pack. Failing that, get your smartphone and put it over the QR code and it will take you straight there. We're also a podcast and you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and other podcast providers. Usually goes up 24 hours after the show has finished. We also support the food bank on this channel. If you want to make a virtual donation today at the Matchday Bucket, go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and you can make a deposit today. Don't forget to enter the Shearer raffle. There's 150 tickets, £1 per ticket, and you can win a limited edition signed Alan Shearer ball. Enter now at nufcmatters.com. If you have a look on our website, we've also got a vast range of mugs, t-shirts, cups, and whatever else takes your fancy. The Isaac t-shirt is proven popular this month, $16.99 plus delivery from nufcmatters.com. Don't forget as well, we do a range of events over the course of the year. We have Peter Beardsley, an up-close and personal evening at the Tynemouth Surf Cafe. Limited tickets remain, 25th of April. Get them now from Surf Cafe, tynemouth.co.uk or from ticketweb.uk. There's also an evening with Peter Beardsley on May the 19th at the Tyneside Irish Centre, and you can get tickets from newcastlelegends.com, and tickets are £50. Don't forget our end of season do takes place 27th of May, 7 o'clock at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets for that one are a tenner, and nufcmatters.com is where you can get your tickets for that. In June, Thursday, the 1st of June to be precise, Rob Lee will be at Louis Liquor Store in the Big Market in Newcastle, and tickets for that are available direct from the venue. And an evening with Rob Lee, Lee Clark and John Beresford takes place the next evening on Friday, the 2nd of June at the Grand Hotel in Gosforth. This is a charity event and tables are of £10, £700, and you can book them by contacting Natalie at heelandtour.org or visiting their website. In July, Gavin Peacock is in Newcastle on July the 10th at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets for that are available from nufcmatters.com. And he also takes an evening with at the Surf Cafe in Tynemouth on the 11th of July. So get your tickets direct from the venue for that one as well. And if you're a boxing fan, the Night of Champions, Ricky Hatton, Frank Bruno, Nigel Benn and Joe Calzaghe takes place at the Fed. And that will be taking place on the 16th of June. More dates to be added. Tickets from all those events, www.goldstarpromotions.co.uk.